So I asked a question in an Instagram story the other day. Does she want it less than he does? And I got about a 50-50 response there. Half of the people approximately said that she does want it less, and half of the people said that she doesn't. So looking a bit at the stats, might suggest that perhaps, in the studies that have been made, men are thinking more about it, men might be initiating it more. But was also a study that said that 1 in every 3 women actually wanted more than the average man. So regardless, I find that this kind of question there's so many factors that influence this that I think it's quite a tricky question to ask, because we need to know so much about this person to understand what question or what we're actually asking. For example, what kind of upbringing have these people had? Has she perhaps grown up with the culture of basically suggesting that her body is dirty or sinful? Maybe she's had trauma. Maybe she doesn't like her body. Maybe she doesn't feel happy in her own skin. Those kind of things gonna have a massive effect on whether she's into it or not. And what I tend to say also is, like, has she had the quality of intimacy that actually meets her as a woman? Because, the culture, our mainstream culture, where most of us have grown up, and we know that most men are regularly watching, some form of porn, which, has an effect on them. And because this material is designed by men for men and doesn't really take women into account and how they are made, then yes, she might not be into the kind of intimacy that is on the table. And that doesn't mean necessarily that she would not be into any form of intimacy. It's just that, the mainstream kind of approach to this is something that doesn't necessarily work for her. But she might not even be aware of this herself, and she might just reason that I'm not into it anymore, or I just have a low drive, for example. So with this in mind, I feel that there's so many things to talk about here, really. And, what I think about is, specifically from that perspective, like, has she had the quality of intimacy that would really actually work for her? Because that kind of idea about intimacy that a lot of men have learned about, and a lot of women as well, of course, all of us have been exposed to this. It's very much hormone, sort of youth fueled ideas about intimacy that might work very well when we're young, but as soon as couples might have been together for a longer while, maybe have a couple of kids, things start to change. And that's where a lot of couples start drifting apart in the intimate department, and often just reason that there's a mismatch here, or she's not into it anymore, it's just the way it is. Where actually it might have more to do with the fact that it was never really her style of intimacy to start with. And because it didn't work for her, because it didn't awaken her, because it didn't reach into her in a way that she actually felt touched and nourished, then she'd rather go without. She'd rather have chocolate and watch Netflix, perhaps, or talk to a girlfriend. So we can't really say she wants it less or he wants it more, because there's so many factors involved here. And when it comes to a man, a lot of the men who have grown up with this kind of mainstream media that I'm mentioning here in code, they have also created a kind of imbalance in their bodies, in the sense that their energy, their passionate energy, is constantly stimulated in a way that it builds and it builds and it builds, and they haven't learned how to circulate and channel this energy inside their own bodies. So it becomes this pent-up pressure that becomes quite uncomfortable and stressful for a man, in the sense that he starts to feel that he has to do something with the energy. He has to, scratch this itch. He needs her for this. So, and the more you kind of get into that energy, the more difficulty you can create, because the more a woman will feel that he is needy in this department, the less she will often feel drawn and attracted to him. So a lot of guys, they've only learned, one way how to work with this pent-up frustration, and unfortunately that way doesn't help. It kind of makes it worse. It becomes like a vicious cycle. Like the more you do it, the more you feel like you have to do it. Whereas there are methods that are, some of them are ancient Taoist methods and tantric methods, where you learn to circulate and balance this passionate energy inside your body as a man, so that it becomes a lot easier to manage. It actually becomes your creative energy and your energy of vitality and clarity and purpose and direction. And you can learn to use it in that way, so that you can kind of have your cake and eat it too. Like you can feel that amazing energy, and you can also benefit from it in so many different ways that doesn't depend on your partner doing you favors. So this is where a lot of guys might end up feeling trapped, that she's not giving it, I feel like I have to have it, otherwise I go crazy. And this is where the way we work with this is very different to the mainstream approach, because once as a man you learn to work consciously with this amazing beautiful life force energy in your body, it becomes more balanced, and you can learn to hold and contain this energy and circulate it in a way that you're not dependent on the release, you're not dependent on your woman, but you can actually really enjoy this, increased energy levels, high energy levels for yourself and in your life. And you can also use it for intimacy at a level that is much higher than when you're coming from a place of that kind of needy desperation, the need for release. And no woman generally wants to feel like, that she's being, needed in the way for your kind of satisfaction. So, these kind of dynamics are so delicate, and in a long-term relationship, they can be really accentuated, where we have a lot to gain from understanding more about our own, passionate life force energy, where it comes from, how it works, how we can work with this energy. And another thing I want to mention here is also that it really also depends a lot on how we look at this, what we believe physical intimacy to be. Because, the way we've been programmed, whether it's kind of, it's procreation, or otherwise it's kind of fun and, it's recreational kind of adult playtime. And whereas, that is true to a certain extent, it's also something so much more than that, which I think often get missed. And because we only see it as, kind of fun connection time, then that also becomes something that's much easier to kind of dismiss, maybe from her perspective, because she can go like, well, I just don't feel it, I'm just not into it, I just don't feel it, I don't need it, and if you look at it then for example, from the perspective of that it's maybe something else, that maybe it's not just fun time. Maybe physical intimacy could be like a path of personal development. Maybe it could even be a spiritual path. Maybe it could be, a vehicle for learning so much more about ourselves. It could be a means to grow and develop our relationship in ways that we couldn't even have imagined when we first met. So, if we see, intimacy from a perspective of that it's a path to our personal development, then we would enter into, intimate moments together with a very different attitude. And then it's like, it's not really about anymore whether you're in the mood or you don't feel like it, because connecting intimately would be something that you do for the purpose of something bigger, and for the purpose of discovering and learning to know yourself, and maybe meeting those places that have built up some resistance, meeting those places where maybe there is some trauma or some, some blocks, some emotions that have been suppressed. And all of the things that can come up in an intimate situation, or even at the thought of it, all of that is valid. All of that are things that we can learn and grow from, and use as material to open up and evolve to next level in our own personal development and in our relationships. So this is what I want to bring to this simple question on Instagram stories, whether she wants it less than him. And yes, so feel free to message me or ask me any questions about this. It's a big topic and I'll be happy to come back to it again. Okay, bye for now.